Chapter 11. Vortex. To Yvonne's utter disappointment, Welshpool Town CCTV and the bypass CCTV had been non-operational for some time. She was crestfallen. "I'm really sorry, Ma'am." Dewi put a hand on her arm. A cost-cutting measure, apparently. "The council told me it may be reinstated soon, but they're making no promises." Yvonne shook her head. "What is the use of having these things if we're not using them? Now we have no way of knowing where Kyle's kidnappers took off to. For all we know, they may be in England." Cheeks puffed right out, she let out a lungful of air. "The van is almost certainly being kept in a lock-up or garage somewhere. We've had officers all over keeping an eye out, and not a sausage. We're shooting in the dark." Yvonne's eyes glazed as she mulled things over. "Ma'am, you need to see this," Di Clayton shouted from the other side of the office. He was with Callum Jones, and they were staring down at Callum's laptop, on which he was watching the lunchtime BBC News. Yvonne and Dewi rushed over. There, in front of them, was a screenshot of a Facebook post showing a young male bound and clearly in distress. The accompanying words left them staring open-mouthed. Di felt a cold chill spread up from the base of her spine. The post was styled like a GoFundMe post, but this was far more sinister. The newscasters reported the comments which had been left by an outraged public and outlined how the message had gone viral within 30 minutes of being posted. "Di, Callum, can you get it up on Facebook? Let's get a proper look at this message," Yvonne instructed, eyes still on the news bulletin. "Use another laptop. I want to see the whole of this broadcast." The post was trending on both Facebook and Twitter. Dewi read the words aloud. "Peter needs your help. He is suffering in isolation away from his family and friends. He will be tortured and killed unless we can raise £1 million in Bitcoin to save him and others like him. You will see photographs of others soon. Head over to YouTube to see our videos. Remember, we need to raise £1 million in Bitcoin. Payment details to follow." It had been posted by a group calling themselves Vortex. A search on YouTube brought up a bunch of videos featuring men in black clothing and hoods, wearing white goateed masks, identical to those worn by the group calling themselves Anonymous. Dewi leaned on Callum's desk. "Are they an offshoot of the hacker group or something else?" Callum shook his head. Anonymous have issued a statement denying all knowledge of Vortex. "Vortexes, tornadoes, whirlpools, they're all destructive forces," Yvonne pursed her lips. "So they want Bitcoin. I was wondering if this sort of thing would happen eventually. The possible consequences of having a dark web and unregulated currencies." The BBC News bulletin continued. A family had come forward to say the 14-year-old boy featured in the post was their son Peter. He had run away from home in Machynlleth, Powys, some 3 weeks before, and they could find no trace of him. The presenters went on to say the Prime Minister had called an urgent meeting and would be issuing a statement as soon as they could verify if the threat was real. "We have to assume the threat is real," Yvonne sighed. "It would be neglectful to do anything else. I'm guessing the intelligence agencies will be all over this one, MI5, GCHQ and SOCA. Dewi put a hand on her shoulder. "Well, we were here first, and we won't be muscled out. They will need our help." The news media was full of the Vortex story and little else. DCI Llewellyn's forehead was shiny as he ran a hand through his hair and paced his room. He hadn't heard Yvonne's light tap on his door. She pushed it open and cleared her throat noisily. "Yvonne, come in." He stopped pacing and turned to her, lips pressed into a thin line. "You wanted to see me?" She looked at him wide-eyed. "Yes. I've had the chief super on the blower. A couple of officers from SOCA are on their way to speak to us. They are especially interested in the van used to snatch Kyle Jenkins and will be chasing down that lead." Yvonne frowned. "But what if Kyle's abduction isn't linked?" "Looks like they are working on the premise that it is. If we handle this correctly, these guys can be a great help to us, whether or not the disappearances are linked." "I see." Yvonne folded her arms, leaning back against his office door, her eyes flicking side to side as she mulled it over. "When will SOCA get here?" "We're expecting them later today. I'd appreciate it if yourself and Dewi could be with me when I talk to them." "Of course." "They'll want to talk to the couple from Welshpool. They may be the only people to have seen the Snatch team in action." "That can be arranged, sir." "What about Mrs. Jones at Dolver? Can you talk to her again and ask if she remembers any vans going past?" See if she remembers anything else that might be useful to us. I can get up there this afternoon, that's no problem. Thank you, Yvonne. Llewellyn pointed to the front page of the Times, which lay on his desk. The PM has ordered that no one is to pay the ransom under any circumstances. Yvonne sighed. How are they going to police that? If transactions are going through the dark web, how are they going to know? There are a lot of people out there who care. We're talking about youngsters. Hell, people are probably already paying. I think you're right. Nonetheless, that is the official line, and you should pass that along to the local families if it turns out that their loved ones have been taken by this group. The DI closed her eyes, knowing how she would feel if it were a member of her family. Can't we have an official announcement? Do I have to deliver this personally? An announcement is too cold and less likely to be adhered to. You and your officers can explain that paying will only encourage this group to take more children. He rubbed the side of his face, and the DI could hear the scrape of the stubble. He continued, You know that's right. Yvonne nodded, her eyes glazed. Her heart weighed heavy in her chest as she made her way back to her team. Kyle had cried himself to sleep for 2 nights in a row. He had not eaten. He did not want to eat. He wanted his mum and his dad. On the second night, he told himself firmly that when he woke up the next morning, all this would be gone. He would wake up in his own bed to the sound of his mummy gently knocking on his bedroom door, the smell of breakfast wafting through to him. The crisps, sandwiches, bottles of Coke and pop-up tents would still be in the cupboard with the electricity meter where he and his neighbours and friends had left them. He would return them all to his friends. Running away seemed like a big adventure. He would be the neighbourhood daredevil, earning him huge respect from the other kids. The whole thing had been a stupid idea. What he needed now was to feel his mum's arms around him and smell the warm, faint perfume of her shampoo. When he was taken along the corridor to the filming room, surrounded by monsters, there were no tears. He was all cried out, but his body shook. Under the spotlight's glare, he cried out for his mum and his dad. Though the tears had dried up, the evidence of their passing was woven through the dirt on his face.